Thank you. So good evening, guys. This is Ron. Little after 6 p.m. on Monday evening. We'll go ahead and get started. We talked about a lot of things on yesterday. We continued our conversation, uh, talking about mindsets, the mindset of the Caucasian, the mindset of the European, getting some understanding of that. We talked a lot about forgiveness and a couple other things that uh, of course, I never remember every detail, but I think those were the two things that pretty much drove our most of our conversation anyway. But is there any aspect of any of that, something you may have remembered that I don't, or conversation from yesterday, or anything else that may have grabbed your attention that you would like to discuss? Questions or comments? Nobody? Okay. Um, wrote down a couple of things yesterday that were being said, and I want to look at forgiveness just briefly, if we can. Uh,
You frozen, Ron? Um, I don't know
uh,
what aspect of forgiveness you want to look at. We didn't hear you.
you did not.
No, you froze when you said you wanted to look at forgiveness.
Well, as I mentioned yesterday, uh, one of the things that I struggled with is forgiveness, and every time I think I have this and feel comfortable about it, uh, I recognize something comes up and I don't. And one of the things that are the things that seem to move me the most is when something happens to other people, uh, mindless, senseless violence, or just something out of just something horrific that has no rhyme or reason to it. And one of the things that I thought was very gripping interview. This guy, it come from a article that Barbara sent me, and I wanted to share it with you and see if we can talk about it, because this to me speaks of forgiveness. It speaks of what we're talking about, and I think I think spirituality, as we have described it, as we have looked at it, is very fluid, uh, meaning that whatever someone feels doesn't mean everybody feels that way, but certainly somebody else does. And hopefully, this helps put clarity in the macro, and it may help someone on this phone and understand better and move them from their place of uncomfortableness as I am seeking to move. But this is a doctor. It's the Gazan doctor. This is a story about a doctor who was a gynecologist, and he lives in the Gaza Strip. He was raised there. He was raised in a refugee camp, and he talks about the poverty there and all the stuff that he's gone through. He and his family has gone through, and so he speaks about this openly. And he is a doctor, although he lives in the Gaza Strip, or once did anyway. He now has a move to Canada, but he goes back and forth. But especially since this ordeal has happened, trying to help as much as possible. But he speaks of you know, all the stuff that has happened, the poverty since he was a child, living in this refugee camp, not having food to eat, and at the time they did have water, but talking about now people not even have a place to go and get water. Most of the hospitals have been destroyed, and the ones that are operating are barely operating. But the thing about it is, although he is a Palestinian, he works in an Israeli hospital. And he talks about the way they treat people in the hospital. Is so you come to this hospital, it doesn't matter if you are Palestinian or an Israeli, they treat you the same. You are treated like a human being. You're treated, you know, with humanity. And it is, you know, as one of the questions that was asked of him, when you go outside of this hospital with these same patients, they're treated differently. So it doesn't matter when you come to the hospital, what is your culture, what is your background, or what part of the region that you're from, you're treated as a human being. But some of the things that show you how long ago this conflict, if you will, has been going on. He talks about losing his family, losing his home, their home to an airstrike in 1970. So this thing, this conflict, this war thing has been ongoing off and on for many, many years. And just how, you know, losing your home and not having food to eat, and how, you know, not having any dignity, and not even being able to have the basic necessities of life. Uh, in what year was it? In 2009, uh, he spoke about there was a conflict again between these two sides in 2008, 2009. And I'm trying to do this briefly so we can just talk about it. But he talks about when he was he had 6 daughters and 2 sons. And when the airstrikes would start, he put 3 of his children on each wall. And that way, if the airstrike hit their house, his hope was, I would not lose everybody. That's pretty sad to have to think about. But there was an airstrike that killed 4 children. 3 of them were his daughters, and one was his niece, and the ages were 13, 15, and 21. And this was a year after his wife had died of cancer. So to lose them, and you would think he would be bitter, but he talks about going to work every day and the hope that he has from working in this hospital. And uh, he one of the things he says is our enemies. He talking about putting a face with your with this mindset. He says our enemies are our arrogance, our ignorance, and our greed. In other words, you need to look like something. You need something that you need to be able to hate. He said, I want them to see the Palestinians as equal, as talented, as human as they are. So, and one of the things that he said that I thought was very, I can find it here. But if anybody has a right, to me anyway, to be bitter, to feel vindictive, is this guy. And all he talks about is peace. All he talks about is a way to sit down with both sides and to talk this thing over. This is something that he asked about, that he answered when they asked him a question. He says, you have, the CNN guy that's interviewing him says, you have said that you see your daughters in every Palestinian child. What does the future look like for Palestinian children now? He gives an answer, but this is the thing that got my attention. He says the cost of war is not just what is happening now, The cost of war is the invisible ghost. It's the post-war. It's the physical, it's the social, it's the spiritual, it's the mental wounds that last for generations. It's ongoing persistence. It's transgenerational stress disorder. And that just kind of sums it all up. We look at this and this hit really for me as reading this. I just kind of have to sit down and pause with it for a couple of minutes. But as we define what forgiveness looks like and what we're supposed to be doing, to kind of sum up who we are with the love and the harmony and the balance and seeing balance through the understanding of I am Elohim, seeing balance through the understanding of masculine and feminine energy, seeing balance through what love looks like. What does this say to you? This man's approach, this man's outlook, this man's hope. He doesn't lose hope. So as I look at this, I find this is to be extremely strong and faithful and the strength that he has in what he believes and what he does, to go into that hospital and that hospital becomes his safe haven for seeing human beings and treating them that way. So we have said that as I change Ron, I change the world. As I change what is in me, I change the world. What do you see in this?
The things I saw in that article is when he said that he wanted them to see Palestinians as humans. What struck me about that is how many times have we done that? How many times have we took positions or functioned in spaces where we were trying to let the oppressor see that we are human too, and it never happened. Even though he was a doctor there, to them, he still was not a human. He was a Palestinian. And in spite of all of that, he continued to hold to his hope. I see this as a nation that's purported to be descendants of Abraham, having no inkling, have no modicum of knowledge about what spirituality is, have no sense of care for life for anyone who does not look like them. And there is nothing that can be done to placate them that would change who they are. I see the necessity of forgiveness in that, because forgiveness loosens and it sets you free from the bondage that hate has brought to you, and it gives opportunity to the one who is the oppressor to free himself as well. So I see this not as an interview that resulted in a story about a doctor born in Gaza and worked in an Israeli hospital. I see this as a story about all people of color on this earth who has done everything they could do to make themselves be seen as human, just as human as those who oppress us. I see it as a story that's telling us about real events, but at the same time, emphasizing to us without saying it that forgiveness is essential if anything is to change. So,
I have a question. And I agree with what you said, and I too, as I read the article, saw the plight of the African in America along those same lines. A lot of it sound very familiar. Uh, as as the parent though, and spiritually speaking, uh, when we say we want to be seen as human, whether it has been the African or the Palestinian, isn't that putting too much power into someone's hands who doesn't know spirituality? There has to be another answer. There has to be another.
would you mute your phone, please? Go ahead, Ron.
Did you hear part of it? And it's to say I want to be seen as a human, seen by who? Who do I want to see me as a human? Because if that my oppressor does not have the capacity to see me as a human, why am I continually giving him that avenue, that road? Why am I relinquishing who I am? I that's the part that is missing to me, that I'm looking for another part of it. Because no matter if I'm talking about me and someone named John Brown, and I'm if John Brown does not have the capacity to forgive me, or I forgive him and he still wants to harm me, there's something here that's still missing. That help me with that.
The reason
Really?
I pointed that out. Go ahead, Charles.
I understand what Ron's saying. I feel what Ron's saying. The way I see it, it takes me back to when Jesus was on the cross and he asked his Father to forgive them, for they do not know what they do. That's what it took me back to that. So if Jesus was saying that, and how do that affect the other person when Jesus say that?
I'll address both of them. One, when you are desperate to live and to protect those who look like you, who are being murdered, your hope is that you can show your humanness to another human, hoping that they will see themselves in you, not in terms of the color of your skin or even your language, but see themselves in you in terms of your care and how you respond to people who are in need. That has been a mantra for every group of people of color who've ever been oppressed, presented themselves as being human, and at the same time realizing that that's not what's happening in the minds of those who are the perpetrators of the murders that's been taking place. And then you get to a place where you see it for what it is, that they're blind to what it means to be a human because they don't treat themselves as human, because subhumans are the ones who commit genocide and engage in the type of destruction of human life that they engage in. And when you embrace that reality, it is then that you are, as Charles said, you just like Jesus on the cross, saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. Jesus on that cross was a message to us. No matter how deep the suffering is, no matter how bad it is, you must find it in your heart to forgive. Because when you do that, you release yourself from the anger, the suffering, the hatred. But then you also give the perpetrators an opportunity to seek forgiveness for what they have done. You become a mirror to them. The people who experienced that in Charleston immediately forgave, and that humanized a lot of people who did not understand the power of forgiveness. They ask, how could you do that? That in itself changed the hearts of people surrounding what's happened. But that White Citizens Council in Lexington that he was affiliated with, that nothing changed with them because they chose not to be changed. The idea of not having a modicum of humanity within them, I think I overspoke when I said that, because everyone has a modicum of humanity within them. And if they really thought that we are who they say we are, then there's no way that they would engage in the type of intimacy they do with the females in these groups of people of color. It's all about ingrained hatred for a group of people who don't look like you. And I do believe that they don't know what they are doing. I do believe that they don't even have, they don't give themselves the space to think about what they are doing. It's a knee-jerk reaction because it has been a part of their lives for generations. And just as we have been taught for generations to be a type of schizophrenic, in that we have to be what? We have to have multiple personalities in order to function in this society. That was passed on to us generation after generation. And now we are at a place where we've chosen not to have these multiple personalities. You're going to see me for who I am in terms of my responses to you, regardless of what you say or do to me. But in addition to that, the most important part is that we've made a conscious decision to forgive no matter what. Now, if Jesus said, forgive them because they don't know what they are doing, Jesus has said they're mindless. They have no thoughts about what they're doing because they don't give the value to another life as they do to their own. And when Jesus said that, Jesus was not just talking to the priests. Jesus was talking about the Romans, because it was the Romans who nailed him to the cross. He was talking about the Romans because the Romans had no reason to crucify him. They simply did it because that was the desire of the priest. So if you had some type of value for life, you could, and you had no reason to crucify, why would you do it? So what I'm saying in essence is this: forgiveness touches the spark in the life of the forgiven. And the forgiven at that point has an opportunity to allow that spark to become a flame, or they douse it and do it all over again. Or they have a crowd, a pack mentality. I wish I had not done this, but they do it all over again when they are within that pack, that group, because they get caught up in the energy of that group and they have to prove something to someone. So that's one of the things I look at when I look at African policemen. They are more brutal than their white counterparts because they got to prove that they are just as brutal, or that they can do the same thing they can do, or they are equal, they are policing equally as forceful as their counterparts. So there's a lot that goes into that. So I hope I responded to you, Charles, in terms of what you asked, and clarify some things to you, Ron, in relationship to what you asked as well. If not, please raise the question. You muted, Ron.
You did, Rev.
Thank you,
I
Charles.
thank you.
Thank you.
Let me say what I see here, and I agree everything you said. And one of the things, this is what he said that made me think of us. He says, I want them to see the Palestinians as equal, as talented and as human as they are. That's the wrong mindset. The Palestinians are not equal. And to say we are just as human as they are, want them to see us as just human as they are, lowers yourself. If someone chooses not to be human and you want to be their equal, you've taken away your own power. So what is it that you see in them that tells you that they're human?
Now,
What is it that you see in them that you think you want to be like that? It's nothing but the economical part of the part that he talks about, the poverty and the violence and them having all the power. But coming down to the nuts and bolts of this, to me, this is like saying I'm trying to negotiate with a toddler, and I want the toddler to see me as his equal, and that is not possible.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%, Ron. I do.
Here's the other part, though. Here's the other part. My vibration has to be strong enough to carry the whole world. That's the strength of the forgiveness. What do I mean by that? When we studied leprosy, and I don't remember everything we said about leprosy, but what leprosy talks about in the Bible is we talked about this being a disease that affects your nervous system. It affects your spinal cord. It numbs you. It not only brings exterior sores to the body, but it numbs your nervous system so that you are not feeling vibration. So in a spiritual sense, this is saying I can't feel the energy of the earth. I can't be one with the universe. Forgiveness restores that. And if I am the universe and the universe is me, and I am, if I do not forgive, I bring this leprosy to myself. and nothing changes. It's not so much that forgiveness is going to change the person. Forgiveness is going to make you the energy field, the target that the lightning rod that brings about the energy to change the atmosphere, to change the world. So if I don't forgive, then that energy in me ceases to be, or ceases to move, ceases to change. But by being that lightning rod, I am the one that allows him to see, you know what, no matter how much I treat this person, these people this way, I'm still not equal to them. So that it opens the eye to me in a different way than what you expected to just by saying I forgive. Because if I just say I forgive, I'm opening the door for you to do something, and you don't have the capacity to do it.
Right. Right. When I said that, I think I overspoke when I said they did not have the capacity to do it. I overspoke because there is a spark of life in all of humanity. They have a choice whether or not they are going to be guided by it or not. And I do believe that they have the capacity. I really believe that. Caucasians have the capacity when they are not embracing the mindset of the European. Does that make sense so far?
Yes and no.
When a Caucasian,
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
when a Caucasian embraces empathy, when a Caucasian embraces the reality that life is to be valued no matter what the color of the skin is, when that happens, then that Caucasian is no longer embracing that mindset of the European. He's embracing a mindset of love and kindness, a mindset that desires change. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Now, to the part where you said to make the statement, to say that I want you to see me as a human. I agree with you wholeheartedly. What that says, what the the quiet message that is. However, I also understand what the doctor was saying when he said that. I understand what our foreparents meant rather when they said that. They were not looking at it from the perspective of I'm dehumanizing myself by doing this, because they saw everyone as being a child of God. And in so being, they felt like everyone could change. And the major part of that is, if I can make them see me, then I can protect not only this generation, but future generations. They did not process it the way we are now. And guess what? We did not process it the way we are processing it now prior to our embarking on this spiritual journey. They don't see us as being human. We've always said that. But now we see it differently. And we're changing not only the mindset, but we are also putting a mirror before all of us so you can see who you really are. If you are being oppressed, you can see who you are. You are a human. And this one who is doing this to me can't be human. I remember growing up and hearing people, people who well, much older, like my grandmama's age and older than my grandmama, say things like, white people don't have no heart. White people are not human. I remember hearing that. And the reason they were saying that is because of the lynchings, because of the rapes that took place. However, they also said one day they will see us as being humans. So I understand that cry from his heart. I do. I really do. Yet now I also understand that that is dehumanizing to yourself, because, well, it can be dehumanized. Let me rephrase that. Because if you say, I want you to see me as a human, then you will see me, if you see me as a human, then you'll see that you're not a human because of what you do.
See, he said it this way, though, Pastor. He said, I want them to see that we are just as human as they are. That sounds like the same cry we had, too. And that's what takes the power out of it.
And we did not realize we were taking power out of it. We did not realize we were dehumanizing ourselves. We didn't realize that. It was simply a cry out of desperation for survival.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And now what do we see? We have been shown by the universe that is not the Caucasian. It is the mindset of the Caucasian. Because there are Caucasians who don't think like that. The European mindset is what brings us, allows rather, for someone to be able to brutalize a people simply because of how they look. We have people who look like us who agree with what's happening in Gaza. So are they human? No. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So regardless of whether you're European by extraction or an African by extraction, if you embrace and live according to that mindset of the European mindset, then you are no different than Netanyahu. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Does that make sense?
It does.
So
I have a question.
When
you finish, I yield.
So the objective is to recognize what's being said when he makes a statement. I want you to see that we are as human as you are. That in itself is, I agree with you that is a diminishing of your own humanity, but you don't realize it's desperation. That's what that is. Evelyn?
The light that you talked about that does the guiding, is that the light of the soul?
Yes. Where the soul is light.
Right. So that's what does the guiding?
Yes. If you allow it to.
Okay.
If you allow it to. Let me explain something, if I may. There are no bodies involved in this in terms of physical bodies, okay? Let's erase the physical bodies. The only thing that's involved in this discussion, the only thing that's involved in how humanity functions is thoughts. Thoughts, that's it. And if we see it as thoughts, then we begin to see a picture developing And the picture that we see developing is thoughts that that are European based or African based. They are loving kindness or they are hatred, racism, and all the other isms. Does that make sense so far? So it's not skin.
Yes.
It's only thoughts that's involved here. And that's one of those things that that is very pertinent to this discussion and extremely important that we understand. And in understanding it, we embrace it and allow it to be a principle by which we live. And then we get beyond this idea that all white folks are evil and all skin folk are not your kinfolk. We get past that and we begin to see and embrace what mindset you have. And that determines whether you're righteous or not, because your thoughts determines your actions. Audrey has a hand up. She has a
I
Caucasian
have sort
hand.
of I don't have any choices. I have a question and a comment.
Sure.
You mentioned a spark, the spark of spirituality. But I imagine this man is Muslim. Yes or no? Anyway, he's Palestinian, so he's probably had parents or grandparents that were also displaced from their homes.
Yes.
But I think after all his parents, grandparents, himself, his family has been through, and he can still say that he wishes things were different and that they're both human. I see that as a spark of spirituality because many Muslim imams teach revenge. So he's got that teaching, but yet he's moved away from that. So I see that as a spark of spirituality. He just doesn't have someone there to help him realize what's going on inside of him, of himself internally. So I think he does have the spark. He just doesn't quite realize it yet and probably has nobody to help him realize it.
I agree with you. His power is in his faith, and it is truly amazing. It even talks about him you losing another 20 members of his extended family after the striking on October 7th. So for him to still hold out hope that this thing can be peacefully brought back together, and it is a tremendous strength to me. That's amazing, and that's what, when I read it, I'm like, God Almighty, this is an example of forgiveness in its highest form. If you look at what he has lost, but I kept reading it and reading it is when I started seeing other things that would make a good discussion. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's very powerful.
In one of those articles that Barbara sent, I think it was, I don't remember which one, but anyway, I think I read this in one of those articles that when Ben Gurion was the leader of Israel, that was the first president of Israel, or prime minister of Israel. The Palestinian leadership went to Ben Gurion and said to him, why don't we fight the British together? because it was a British colony. And what Ben Gurion did, he told the British what the Palestinians said. And from that point forward, we know what the rest of it is. Europe and the US supported everything brutal that Israel did to control that land. So this denial of humanity has been from the beginning. Ben Gurion knew that once he told the British that they were going to side with him, because both of them were Europeans, and he knew what the plight of the Palestinians was going to be. So his efforts were to make sure that he was in good with the British. So when he got ready to do what he wanted to do, and that is to drive Palestinians from their homes, he would have support in doing that and justification. So what I'm saying is now that we see what's happening here, the same thing that happened with Ben Gurion and the Palestinian leadership is the thing that is happening right now. The difference is it is Netanyahu and the leadership of America, Biden. What I think, I don't know how many of you are aware of Biden's speech in Charleston at Mother Emanuel. What was it, last week? Did you know that there were people escorted from that church because they stood up when Biden stood up and said, "You have blood on your hands"? You didn't see that in the news like as you should have, but they pretty much shut everything down, protesting what he was helping Netanyahu do with weaponry as well as with support without regard to the genocide that's taking place there. So what I see in all of this is, but for someone standing in the gap, there would be no Palestinians anymore. And if you really, really think about the totality of what's taking place, the United States supported Saudi Arabia when they were committing genocide in Yemen against the Houthis. And now America and Britain are bombing the Houthis. So this seems to me to be a concerted effort to beat people into submission or to destroy them altogether. What I suggest is keep an eye on the turmoil that's in Israel right now. There was a meeting of the war cabinet, and it was invaded by people who were demanding the hostages be released. And that came on the heels of Netanyahu saying that there will not be a two-state solution. The reason I say keep an eye on that is because they did Netanyahu the same way that group of people did Biden in Charleston. The turmoil that has erupted in Israel is going to be the demise of Israel as it has been known from the past. And the turmoil in this country is going to be the demise of it. It's going to bring this country to its knees to the extent that it's going to be extremely difficult for this government to continue to support genocide, whether it's in Gaza or whether it's in Iraq. It doesn't matter. I say that because the mindset of the people who are beginning to dominate government in this country is totally different than the mindset of those who have dominated in the past. It once was, at one time rather, the quote unquote progressives or the younger minds in this government were considered outliers. But now it has grown to the place where the people who think like Biden are outliers. And that's going to increase as we move forward with these other elections. Is Trump going to be reelected? No, he's not. And Biden will wish he hadn't been. Because the people who are coming into office are going to be people who has a mindset totally different than his or what he expected to be. People are coming into office who care about people who value life. And this in itself speaks volumes about the demise of a country and the raising of a nation. I believe that's going to happen. Now back to Israel. Israel is no different than America. Israel is a colony that was set up by the British, the French, and the Americans. And that colony that was set up was given the authority to rid itself of the inhabitants of the land, to control them, and if they fail, to submit to the control to destroy them. No different than America did to the Native Americans. America is a colony. This is colonialism in this country. We don't think about it that way, but it is a colony that has taken land away from the original people. That's what a colony is. England is not a colony. France is not a colony, but America is a colony. And until we verbalize and realize it, it will remain what it is. Meaning that it would try to maintain this respect as a country, but this is a colony that was set up by Europeans, and it's going to end up the same way that Israel is, and that is defeated, so that a nation can be raised up in its place. I'm done.
If we would please, I wanted to go back to Evelyn and make sure that we answered her question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Evelyn.
Go back to her.
Yeah.
Evelyn, are you okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question, and I'm not trying to be a rebel here, but do we feel empowered? I mean, the people on this phone, do we, are our prayers and our desires? I don't want us to be reactive. We know who we are. We have a plan. We trust and we have hope in who we are. The election is coming up. I was watching the news this morning, and I see something of all states. You know, we're one or two states that don't even have a hate crime bill. And I'm like, why does that upset you, Ron? Do we feel empowered? Do we trust who we are in the midst of all of this and what's going on? What do you think about that?
Can't see why we wouldn't feel empowered. Because we're not reacting to anything, we're responding to everything. It doesn't matter that South Carolina doesn't have a hate bill, a hate crime bill. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The states that have hate crime bills, they don't use them. They don't. I mean, do you think that anybody in this country in power cares about a hate crime bill, period? No. When a couple of Asians got punched in the face, and in less than a year, they had a hate crime bill for Asians. Nobody has been brutalized the way we have. No one has been treated worse than we have in terms of how creative they were in murdering us. And a hate crime bill has been sitting in Congress, my God, for over 100 years. And it's gone nowhere. So if it's sitting in Congress and has gone no place, and you've had Democratic control of the government, you've had Republican control of the government, and none of them saw fit to make sure that that bill passed. They don't care. Now, when slavery was constitutionally ended, with the exception of if you commit a crime, that did not end slavery. Slavery ended, as far as I know, in the early 60s. In some places, probably the late 70s, but it's in the early 60s. I know for a fact it was in Mississippi and in parts of South Carolina. So what am I saying to you? If we don't feel empowered, then we may as well stay off of Zoom and the phones, because we're not doing anything to help anyone. If you yourself don't feel empowered, how can you possibly empower someone else? It's not going to happen. Legislation does not determine the fate of people unless those in power wants it to. If legislation was going to change anything, then we would already be on parity with Caucasians in this country in terms of the way we live and the process through which we acquire economic strength. All of that would be in place. But we have none of that. It's because legislation means nothing.
Yeah, that was just an example of the things that happen and have been happening, how rapidly things have been happening, and what we see. Because
I just wanted to speak to the whole gamut of it. That's all.
yeah,
That's all. I'm not denying what you were saying at all.
I just see something in this I can't explain, and don't. I think as Charles brought up, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, is extremely powerful, and I think it releases an energy that we haven't, at least I don't understand yet. I don't see yet. I think forgiveness is still something that I like to look at a little further, because I think it's extremely empowering. And
I want to ask you a supposition about that. Suppose that, let's say, for example, and he did exist because of the historical accounts of Josephus. But suppose that Jesus never existed in this earth. And we read in a book someplace, let's say we read it in the Bible, And this was an example of how we are to live. Regardless of whether or not you have been crucified, burned at the stake, skinned alive, boiled in oil, you must understand that the power of forgiveness can preserve future generations, because the generations who are doing this to you do not understand, do not know what they are doing. And if they don't know what they are doing, then how will they ever know what they are doing? This is no different than, how can I understand unless I have someone teach me? How can I know what I'm doing if no one shows me what I'm doing? And the showing of what you are doing in this regard has nothing to do with a physical showing of what is being done. It has everything to do with a spiritual interdiction, so that the heart can be pricked and you can see what you are doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I believe that what we are doing currently and in the past, we are engaged in an interdiction, a spiritual interdiction into this earth. Now, I don't believe for a moment that this is outside of the order of the Creator. I don't. I believe that everything that we have experienced and shall experience was brought into existence for the purpose of pushing us to a corner where we would have to decide who we are, who we desire to be, where we would have to look closer at the allegories that were presented to us in the Bible and see that they are talking to us. And in doing so, what are they saying about us or to us? And realizing what they are saying to us and who they're showing us and who they're showing us we are, I believe that the only way that these things will end is for us to truly embrace Elohim by virtue of changing the mindset, creating an image and likeness of love and kindness, that kind of thing. And the creating in the image of love and kindness comes from the tongue. It's how we talk when we understand what the scriptures are saying. If it was just one of us who understood all of this and was talking to no one, nothing would change. But we are at a point where we have frequent discussions so that we can understand or have a deeper understanding of what's being said when we look at the message of the book that has been left for us to peruse, to understand, to research. And the research does not change anything, neither does it change us. The research shows us how to change. And then when you begin to speak without having to do the research to prepare a lesson, when you are able to speak from the heart and you're seeing the messages of these allegories, it is then that you can truly say that the life is in your tongue and death is in the tongue of religion. So the more we speak of what's happening and what is being said from the books, from the words that were left for us to read and understand, the more we begin to create. There is no creation in terms of going to make everybody physically look like me. No. Creation is creating a new mindset. It is so focused on understanding spirituality until you take the old mindset and it ends up in a cocoon, and a metamorphosis takes place. And when it exits that cocoon, it is something totally different than what it was prior to entering the cocoon. And that is why the scripture says that a metamorphosis must take place with your mind, with your heart, before anything else can change within you. And all we are doing when we talk about and the messages that is given to us from these allegories, all we are doing is being expressive of who we see that we are and offering the same to everyone who listens, to everyone who raises the questions. And that is a reason why it is so necessary for us to stay the course and not run after the shiny things that are distractions. And believe you me, there are plenty of them. So I believe that we are in a spiritual space that was set aside for us to occupy at such a time as this. I believe that when we speak about forgiveness, it opens hearts, it opens spiritual doors. And as we continue to speak with endearing words about who humans are supposed to be, humans begin to become that, because we are infusing life into a mind, into a heart where death once occupied. And it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we are not a party to the destruction of the earth and the dehumanizing of those who occupy the earth. At any time when we have hatred or anger because of what someone did and we want to seek reprisal for what they did, then we are a part of the death of humanity, the decline of humanity. When we have those feelings and we work through them, or we speak to ourselves and say, that's not who I am. I am loving kindness. I am forgiveness. When we do that, we then move ourselves from that space of being a party to the decline and remain the life that is necessary for the death of the mind to be removed and replaced with life. Does that make sense? That's what I believe we are. We don't have a luxury of engaging in spiritual debates. We don't have the luxury, I mean political debates, not spiritual debates, I'm sorry. We don't have the luxury of engaging in political debates, because that's not what changes the hearts of men. That's what turns the hearts of men into stones. We don't have spiritual debate because there is no debate about truth. There are questions to understand the nature of it. But there are no debates about truth because there is no such thing as winning and losing when it comes to truth. You're always a winner, but you can never be an individual winner. Winning is always collective. When we are talking about spirituality and refusing to allow our understandings of spirituality to devolve into a debate, because at that point, they become religious/political. And there is no place in that, for that rather, in what we do. The plight of humanity is so important until we cannot allow ourselves to recoil from anything that challenges the truth. When the truth is challenged by the voices of men, they are no different than the ones who crucified Jesus. And our response to those voices must be, Father of room, universe, forgive them, restore them to where they should be, release them from their ignorance, because they truly don't know what they are saying, and they certainly don't know what they are doing. That's what this forgiveness is all about from the cross. Realizing not only the power of it, not only the necessity of it, but realizing that it can never, ever be denied. No one should be denied forgiveness. No one. And I can't reiterate enough. You can't depend on your brother to forgive somebody for you any more than you can go to their brother to ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness must come from the heart of every man for himself, for herself. If that is not the case, then there is no power in it at all. And we have been taught that forgiveness is simply something you say, as opposed to something that you experience. Forgiveness is not a word to be heard. Forgiveness is an experience. It is a spiritual experience that all of us must have in order for us to truly forgive. The hardest person to forgive sometimes is ourselves. But it's just as important as forgiving anyone else, because without forgiving ourselves, there is no restoration to the place where we are supposed to be. And that place where we are supposed to be is a place of rhythm with the universe. Our vibration and the universe's vibration must be the same. And that's the spiritual experience of forgiveness. And embracing it on a continuous basis makes it extremely easy for you to forgive. It's so easy for you to forgive when you are determined that that's going to be your life. You don't even have to think about it. It happens because that's who you are. Every spiritual principle is not who we are to become. Every spiritual principle is who we are already. And we are being guided by the energy of deliverance. We are being guided to that place where we realize and embrace that we are all of the spiritual principles that has existed and that ever shall exist. They have never changed since the beginning. And no matter what we say or do, it is impossible for us to change them. But they are to change us by changing the way we think. And the way we think changes the way we act. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
Anyone, questions or comments?
I have another comment, Ron.
Yes, sir.
As Red was talking and the way y'all was saying things, it brought me to mind of Nineveh. God would want Jonah to go to Nineveh and to speak to those people, and he didn't want to do it. And like I said, he got put in the whale for 3 days, or a big large fish for 3 days, then he got spit up on the land at Nineveh. And he went and did what God said, but he was still mad or pissed off, I should say, because a lot of people repented. And that's what I was getting through what Red was talking about us. You don't want to be like the people of Nineveh.
No, you don't want to
And
be like
then,
Jonah. No, you don't want to be like Jonah. You want to repent.
yeah. And Jonah left, and Keaton still was pissed off that God had, accepted their repent and delivered them. And he sat up on the tree, still pissed off. That's all I can tell you. And then God came to him and told him and talked to him. That's how I understood this right here was what we're going through now. That's all.
Good point to bring up. Because we cannot observe what people do and then they change and we say they should be punished. We can't do that. We cannot. If there is someone who, let's look at the governor of Texas who allowed those people to drown in the barbed wire. If he says, I was wrong in what I did, I am responsible for the death of those people, blood is on my hands. We cannot wish something bad on him because he changed. And the reason I say that is because it may have been your word, your desire, what you put in the macro that caused him to change. So now that he's changed, you want to kill him. You want to imprison him. I'm not talking about those who are committing crimes, even though this is a crime. I agree to that all day long. But you can't hate him or dislike him or wish anything on him because if the system determines that they are not going to punish him, then you leave it alone. If the system decides that it's not going to convict Donald Trump for anything that he did, leave it alone. Because the universe knows what's happening next. We don't. Leave it alone if they decide not to do that. We know how corrupt the system is. Just leave it be, because it is being dismantled as we speak. What Donald Trump did and is doing is nowhere near as bad as what the system does with institutionalized racism. Nowhere near as bad as what the system does to Native Americans. Let it go, because our desire is for a nation that is beneficial to all people, be raised up as this country begins to crumble, along with the systems. Does that help you, Charles?
Yes, it did, Bill. And I appreciate it.
That's what I say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I hope all of this made sense. We started off talking about that article, and I thought that could be a very powerful article, and it's led to a equally powerful discussion. I hope it has helped someone. Seems like a good place to take a pause. So we'll remember our meditations and have a good week. Okay, stay warm. Thank you for coming in tonight, everyone who spoke, and your energy if you didn't speak. Remember, if you have a question, anything, send us a text, okay? And we'll go from there. Have a great week, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Good night.